Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Haneen Sayed, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of LIFE. On behalf of LebNet and LIFE and our outreach partner, International Lebanese Medical Association, ILMA, I welcome you to the third episode of the Engage and Act series. In this weekly series, we are aiming to highlight the humanitarian crises unfolding in Lebanon and to spotlight the efforts of the various organizations working on the ground today in the country. To date, we have heard from three NGOs 2 weeks ago, Beit al Baraka, Arc-en-Ciel, and Rouad. Our second series last week featured the Lebanese Red Cross. So if you missed any of these two events, they are available on the Life YouTube channel. But today, we're very honored to be hosting Minister Nasser Yassin, Lebanon's National Emergency Committee Coordinator and Caretaker Environment Minister. But before I welcome Minister Yassin, allow me to briefly say a few words about the hosting organizations and what's happening now in Lebanon. LebNet is a nonprofit organization founded in 1999 in Silicon Valley. It connects and empowers over 2,500 Lebanese diaspora members in tech across the US and Canada. Its mission is to support Lebanese tech professionals and entrepreneurs globally through networking, mentorship, and career development. Life was founded in 2009. It's a global professional network aimed at empowering the Lebanese community and working together towards a bright future. With about 1,500 members across 20 chapters spread across the GCC, Asia, Europe, the US, and recently growing into Latin America. Our impact is on education and job creation. ILMA USA is a network of healthcare professionals in the USA of Lebanese descent. It facilitates education and research opportunities for medical students in Lebanon. Today marks the 36th day of the Israeli war on Lebanon in the most aggressive form, already surpassing the number of days of the 2006 war. Somewhat differently from 2006, Lebanon is facing today an unprecedented humanitarian crisis in both scale and depth. Within just a few days, more than 1 million people were displaced from their homes and villages, and it is continuing today after we've seen the bombardment of major city of Baalbek. As of October 30, there were more than 2,700 conflict-related deaths and 12,500 wounded. At least 99 health professionals are killed while on duty. The rapid displacement is significantly increasing the public health risks, with overcrowding in shelters raising the likelihood of infectious disease spread. Many displaced individuals lack essential supplies. Inadequate shelter and water supply will also further exacerbate the health challenges. The government established some 1,100 shelters, hosting about 200,000 of the displaced. 70% of these shelters are public schools, putting the start of the school year at risk. Anywhere between 500 to 550 students are out of school of a total population of 1 million. The economic and social impact of the war on Lebanon will for sure be enormous. The Lebanese Chamber of Commerce already has announced last week that economic activity in the private sector has fallen by 80%. The UNDP Rapid Impact Assessment projected the economy would contract by 10% in 2024. Poverty in the country, already high prior to the war, will likely rise again. To hear firsthand how this humanitarian calamity is unfolding, how the government is responding, and the outcomes of the Paris conference last week, we're privileged to have with us Minister Yassin, who, as I mentioned, is Lebanon's National Emergency Committee Coordinator and Caretaker Environment Minister. Previously, Minister Yassin was a professor of policy and planning at the AUB. He founded and directed the Lebanon Crisis Observatory. So, Minister Yassin, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Haneen.
I want to kick off by asking you, as a coordinator of the government response, which didn't start in mid-September or late September, started from before, can you give our audience a brief overview of the government's response plan? We've heard it in different moments, different times. Obviously, it's being updated. So I think our audience would very much like to hear a brief from you on the plan and how prepared were you come the 36 days ago?
Thank you, Haneen, and thanks for the organizers and Life and all the partnering organization for hosting this webinar and this discussion. We started designing and working on a contingency plan and emergency plan almost a year ago, actually. But in the month between October, November 2023 and early September 2024, most of the work has been focused on the displaced in South Lebanon. So the hostilities and the aggression was until 23rd of September, give and take, on South Lebanon villages and towns, border ones in particular. This resulted in the displacement of around 100,000, 115,000 people from border towns and villages. Almost 70% of them stayed in South Lebanon. So that's why at the national level, this wasn't perhaps seen as, a major news, to put it this way. But there was an operation taking place to support around 100,000 people in South Lebanon. We did this fully with the collaboration with UN agencies, the Office for Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, and other partner agencies. And we did implement through local structure, local authorities at the level of governors in the Bati and the South, or the level of unions of municipalities. So there was an operation taking place. But throughout, with the different scenarios that we put in place, the worst case scenario was to, get the 2006 July war experience. But a lot of these scenarios were looking at the more at that time. I mean, and that's written even in the joint documents with the UN. The more plausible one, to put it this way, of 300,000 people being displaced from South Lebanon further north. But what happened after 20 in the evening of 23rd of September was unprecedented in terms of scale, of intensity, of speed, and the number of people reaching around 1.2 million, of people being displaced over the course of 3 to 4 days. This is as you don't see this except in major natural disaster, a major earthquake, where you see 20% or 25% of the population moving from the residence to another place. So as much as you would think you are prepared, and we were not, of course, to this scale and intensity of an aggression and war on us, neither were UN agencies for that matter, who've been partnering fully with us, and we're grateful for the partnership we have for them, nor to a lot of the actors who are supposed to, I mean, I'm talking about non-governmental actors and donors and so on. So we were not taken by surprise, but the scale and intensity of it was unprecedented. We immediately we activated the National Crisis Response Committee at the level of the Prime Minister's office, with all ministries and then all UN agencies being part of it. And we started first opening shelter for people to move from the streets to, somewhere where they can stay. And I mean, until the morning, we had around 1,100. Now we have more with the recent attacks on Baalbek and the Baalbek area. So things are still moving and still moving, geographies, moving parameters. And this is creating more and more challenges for the current response system we put with the UN and with other actors. I mean, at the moment we have around 250,000 people, around 50,000 families in collective shelter, and around 800,000 to 900,000, almost around 150,000 families in houses, which make the majority of people are residing, with friends, or have rented, or staying with family members. Number of families staying together. Many of them who had some savings, and now they've spent them during the last 4 or 5 weeks. So the challenges are huge, including shelter, including the winterization, food security, being prepared, as I mentioned, to winter, water and sanitation, and to make the collective shelter more and more acceptable for people to live in them. And of course, even sending aid to areas in the south, in Hasbaya, in Marjayoun, in Ramesh, and other towns, or in Nabatiya, where some people have stayed, in Saida even, and of course now in Baalbek and Hirbil have become very challenging to get aid and convoys to them. So this is on the immediate life-saving humanitarian response we've been, working on or doing for the past 4 to 5 weeks. But there are also challenges when it comes to providing basic and social services for everybody, for those who the displaced, 1.2 million or 1 million plus, and for the host communities and everybody with the hostilities, with the destruction of some of these public institutions, or with the demographic change that we've seen in major cities, including mostly in Beirut, administrative Beirut, and in other parts of Lebanon, but also in Mount Lebanon, where 50% of the displaced are between Beirut and the southern districts of Mount Lebanon.
Thank you. So you've been quoted as saying there's $250 million a month is needed.
Yes.
Can you explain that, and also explain? Then there was the appeal, the 426 million that happened almost immediately after the displacement started to take place, and then there's the Paris conference, which brought in roughly 1 billion, including 200 million for the army and the rest humanitarian. Explain to us all of these. Yeah, how do they, are they integrated, are they the same? And then also, if you can, minister, and this is the question on everybody's mind, how is aid distributed? You've been asked this, and I think our audience, who primarily, as you know, are diaspora, Lebanese diaspora, want to know and hear it from the horse's mouth. How is the aid distribution mechanism done?
So the 250 million, let me go a step back. The flash appeal, which is fully um, to the UN agencies who are jointly working with us on the current response, in collaboration, full collaboration with the government, but all the money would go to the UN agencies. That was around $428 million for 3 months. So, and then we added to the flash appeal when we went to Paris, the winterization and upgrading water and sanitation facilities in collective shelter, which is an additional $58 million for the coming 4 months, including the winter season. And of course, we added under emergency an immediate need for the civil defense to be prepared to undertake the rescue and all the missions. And they're really stretched all over the country, and they've been under also attacks by the Israelis for the past weeks. So they needed around 5.5 million as really immediate assistance to keep going with their, operation, particularly the rescue and the firefighting missions they've been undertaking so bravely for the past 4 weeks, and even before. So this is the more emergency life-saving needs, which will be around 500, $500 million, give and take. So this is for the next 4 months in particular, including the winterization. And then we added another.
And is that funded? Has that been funded, or what percent?
Now, the Paris conference, it was underfunded, but there were negotiations with donors. We had meetings in the Sarai several times, and then the Paris conference came with the 800 million pledges that most of them would go for the humanitarian, life-saving, immediate needs we have. We added another section in the conference paper from the government, in addition to the flash appeal and the emergency needs that I mentioned, supporting public institutions in delivering emergency basic and social services, which came to around 600, I think 20 or 650 million dollars. $650 million. So, and these are to support the delivery of health services, education under emergency, water, because water has been, and all the other services have been under a lot of pressure even before the recent war on us. And now they have to redesign their operation and distribution for people in collective shelter by water tracking, but also to support water establishment. As an example, I'm giving to support water establishments to provide services to the new demographics with the displacement of over 1 million people to new areas. So this would require more investment and redesign of this operation. The same for waste collection. I'm giving an example. Beirut's waste weight or volume, the tonnage has increased by 40 to 45% overnight with the displacement of Dahi on the eve of 27th of September. So these are and you need then to work on um, uh, double shifts and new investment in the collection of waste and keeping the city under minimal levels of functionality. Other stuff as well, including telecom, opening streets after those attacks to allow the humanitarian system to keep working to serve everybody. So, I mean, these what we called emergency services, social and basic services, and where we needed more than $600 million. So this is the 1 billion plus ask that we put in Paris, and we're continuing in the dialogue and discussion with the donors, with the UN agencies, and with other actors. So this is where the $250 million a month came. Some of the services were budgeted for 6 months, for 3 months, depending on the different ministry how they did it, and we are developing this to make it all standardized for the different ministries and the different public sector institutions that put these proposals for emergency service support, including the Ministry of Social Affairs, to support the cash assistance and to increase the portfolio of cash assistance for those now in need. So this is the 600 plus million dollars. If you add them and you look at the time frame for each of these, whether the life saving for first for initially 3 months and then for additional months for the winterization, and then for what we call the emergency social and basic services, you will get the figure of $254 million a month. So this is the 250 figure that we actually put publicly in the media and in our narrative, which is a huge ask, for a budget that the government has been running. Um, I mean, on average, at first it was around $1 billion in 2022, and then we actually increased this to around $202 billion. And for the 2024-25, we were putting a budget forecast for 3 point something billion dollars in discussion with Parliament. So, when you say $250 million a month for the life saving and for emergency services, this is a huge undertaking, huge, ask to keep things going in the coming few months.
Absolutely. One question that's already
The
come
aid, you want me to ask the aid now? The aid.
in. In fact,
So there
yes,
are there are three sources of aid that we've been, bringing to people or sending to people. The first, and this is the most significant, this is the joint response we designed with the UN agencies. And these are divided into different sectors. Food security, for example, water and sanitation, basic assistance to shelter, and then you get education, nutrition, health, etc. So most of the operation here is about life saving for those in collective shelter. So there are around 200,000 meals every day distributed for people in collective shelter on average, between hot meals or ready to eat meals. And of course, there's the same for in terms of mattresses, non-food items, water and sanitation, water trucks, drinking water. This is a major humanitarian operation taking place. And this is where the flash appeal was put to fund this operation. A second line of assistance we've been receiving directly as a national emergency or government emergency committee is the bilateral, non-bilateral, items. So these are
in kind.
food in kind, exactly. Food and non-food items. We've been receiving in kind from many nations, but mostly Arab nations who've been really supportive, and we're grateful for this support because it's filling a gap. It's still happening through airplanes, and I'd like to clarify that an airplane usually carries on average around 40 tons of aid. 40 tons would make around 1,050 or 1,100 food parcels. This is it, you know. So, but what we received recently is a ship of assistance from UAE, and this is equivalent to around 50 airplanes, like 2,000 tons at one go. This is the new routes we are now discussing bilaterally with the countries who've been really supportive in supporting us in terms of the in-kind support. The system we put is to send this through the local authorities under the supervision of the governors, al-muhafizin. Each governor has a crisis cell that's coordinating the response at the district level, and then it can go down in certain muhafazat or governorates into the level of qa'im maqam at the qada level, or the unions of municipalities in certain areas. So this is again a system that's been supported, and we want it to work. We want to show that the government institutions, from the smallest unit of municipality or even muhtar to the governor, muhafiz, to the central level at the line ministries, are actually working together. And we're stressing all the time that any distribution has to be coordinated with the governors, even if it's slight coordination by informing them. We are stressing on this. So the bilateral in-kind aid that we've been receiving is all sent through the governors. It's still in a certain percentage. I mean, like 25,000 food parcels. I mean, it can give around 20% of the needs, or 15%. The same for the non-food items. But with the new shipments we've been receiving, this is going to be multiplied in the coming days. And this is all transparently done through the way we send to governors. They actually we publish this. Whatever we send to the governors in turn, they publish whatever they send to the municipality level. Municipality level has they put the names of beneficiaries, and we keep these. All of these are being published except for the names. We keep them for the record, and we're creating an auditing system for this, as well as a grievance mechanism for those people who are saying there is no aid coming, or someone handled some aid in a way or another. We're having judges now, and we're putting the final touches on a system where people can talk to two or three judges and discuss and present such cases or complaints.
Is it hotline or something? A hotline or what?
We the hotlines are at the governor level. So the governor level, they have the hotlines, which is supported by the Lebanese Red Cross in on all the crisis cells that have been put at the local level, at the governor level, or qada level, or municipal level. So this is a second line of support that we've been doing for the last couple of weeks or 3 weeks, and we're enhancing and improving it. It depends, of course, on the aid flow from bilaterally from supporting countries, including, GCC countries have been very supportive. Jordan sending mostly to the army because there are a lot of families of LAF personnel who've been displaced, as well as the ISF or Amnam or Amin Dawli. And we're trying to always, keep some support flowing for those families. Egypt, Pakistan, and Turkey, those were the most, I mean, not to miss anyone, but also some European nations have sent, and Russia and others. And a lot of the bilateral aid has been, or half of it, to be more accurate, has been more medical supplies that Ministry of Health has been also receiving them and distributing them in a very transparent way, and it's all published in a portal. Both the medical as well as the relief items, there are portals or dashboards where you can see all of these transactions and all of these distribution. The third line is happening through government entities that have been supported as much as the budget allows for this, whether the High Relief Committee, the Council of the South, Ministry of Social Affairs, And now we're stressing that they apply the same approach that we did in the National Emergency Committee to go through the governors, inform them, do through the governorates, and publish. And we actually sent them a circular from the Prime Minister to all of these entities to follow the same approach we did in the Emergency Committee to publish and send us and to put everything on the portal. We want to stress on the issues of transparency and the centrality of this for any of this. If trust has been shaken by the government for the many, many reasons in the past, we want to show this time that government institutions, the public sector, there are decent people there from the smallest unit at the municipality to the Council of Ministers, where people are keen in supporting in a transparent, effective, and efficient manner.
Thank you. Let me pick up on a couple of questions already coming in. Anonymous person says that you mentioned the majority of displaced families are residing with the loved ones. How are you tracking the number location of displaced people? And actually said it's good that you're able to develop some infrastructure to empower your response. Wondering if you can speak more about that.
Sure. I mean, this is very important. I mean, we recorded or registered people in collective shelter. We have the names of around 200,000. We're still working on updating this through the local structures we have. For those who have been residing in houses, uh, outside the main cities, all the municipalities have their own, databases, and we're getting the data from them. Some governors, with the Lebanese Red Cross, who are supporting them in the crisis cells at the governorate level, have put a voluntary way of registration, but this is not enough. It created also some, issues, challenges about the data and who's there. But was very basic, just voluntary to know who is where. But almost all municipalities and local authorities have their own, except for the main cities, the major cities, Beirut, Tripoli. Saida is better in terms of the registration. And this is where we got the 1 million, displaced from these lists. These are not lists of names, and we're not at this stage requiring names. But at least we have this general, info about the number of families and individuals who've been displaced and living outside collective shelter or living in houses and with family, with friends, or renting as well. Where we would need, and we're working now with the Ministry of Social Affairs, with the Council of Ministers, with the World Food Program, is the registration to move gradually towards cash assistance. This is where it makes more, relevant, and where we need the accurate data, particularly if we want to target, and given that funding won't be so open for everybody, we're going to target the most in need. And expansion of the cash assistance program, that's, this, Haneen, from the previous support you gave for this program, is key for us. And this is the way forward we're working for now in terms of the emergency situation we're in, or for the coming period of pre-day after, to put it this way, as well as the day after. This is where the cash would fill the gaps, because, the humanitarian system logistically, with the ongoing attacks and aggression, with the challenging times we're having to send convoys. I don't mean that cash will be smooth and straightforward, but cash would cut some of the logistical cost and the operation we have. This is a big operation to get assistance for 1.2 or 1.1 million people across the country. So making the social assistance or the cash assistance, to make it in a simple way, to call it in a simple way, is key for the coming month. And this is where we've been working with the UN agencies, Ministry of Social Affairs, as well, and the World Bank in preparation for the Paris conference, as well as the Council of Ministers, I mean the Prime Minister's office, where the data has been hosted. But it will take time to get the registration of everybody outside shelter, to qualify them to be, qualified for assistance.
Yeah, no, I fully understand, and obviously it's voluntary that people. I mean, it's a choice that people, if they want to register in a government system or not, they can't really be forced to do that. But I think you mentioned now something very important, which is using a government system that's been working, that's been developed before the crises, and then scaling it up and modifying it. In particular, the cash transfer program. So indeed, and that comes to this question about how can you strengthen government systems going forward. This is going to be this is a question that's vexed Lebanon many years, and it continues with every war or crisis or explosion we have. And so I'd like, yeah, to hear your views on this a bit more.
I think the what we put in Paris in the conference was clear on the central role of the public sector and government institutions in being in the driving seat of the crisis response. We understand we're being under-resourced, understaffed, and so on. But we fully working with the UN agencies, even in many ways, taking the lead in some areas. Uh, that's at the humanitarian emergency level. But to support public sector and public sector institutions is key, starting from the Lebanese armed forces uh, as the with the ISF and other national security agencies to be the sole institutions to maintain law and order across all the country, to the social and basic services that need to be provided by the Lebanese state and its different, tools or different instruments, ministries, agencies, funds, and so on and so forth. So this has been key. I know it's challenging and it's going to be, it will take time to reform the public sector and to bring it to a certain level of absorbing capacity of these funds that we are requesting. If I mean, almost all ministries and public sector administration have lost the more qualified people who resigned or took unpaid leave for the past couple of years when salaries has dropped from a relatively decent level before the 2019 or before 2020 to really negligible amounts. So a DG used to make maybe around uh, $4,000 or $3,000, and suddenly they're making $200. They cannot even pay the generator bill. So this is key, reforming the public sector, uh, upgrading all the practices, modernizing it, digitizing the public sector are key. I know we are now in the midst of war and we'll focus on the life saving, but to really work on stabilization and prevent the total collapse of an existing fragile system or fragile systems are key. And in order to prepare the state and state institutions to be the key and main and only actors in the day after or the after the war ends. This is it. I mean, it will be and it's gonna be challenging and tough for anybody to push for such reform in the midst of war and a post-war situation. But we need to do it. We need to do it to prevent the previous mistakes or not to go into the previous mistakes we had since 1990s until the Beirut blast, where the state was sidelined in a way or another.
Thank you. There's several questions coming in now about where do you publish this report about aid distribution? Is there a website people can go to? It'd be great if you can share that with us, and we will share it then later with the members. But um, can you please
Sure.
confirm, Minister, that there is such a public making public the information about what's coming in and where it's going?
Sure. I mean, if I have it now, I can just put it on, or I can send it later by an email. We have it actually in almost all the daily reports we have. We have a situation uh, report every day that comes between 6 and 8 p.m. And usually it has the link, but this is in a small print and maybe we need to publicize it more, but we're doing it and we're upgrading even this portal to make it friendlier. in, in terms of the way that people can. I was today at the UB with the Beirut Urban Lab, and we're working on a friendlier system or portal where people can see how aid is flowing, and of course they can see as well the needs and in some areas, the more vulnerable ones, the hard to reach ones. This is now in the works, and we're bringing all the actors who've been I mean fantastic in supporting people in this displacement and in the current emergency situation, including universities, non-state actors. But still, the key here that the government and the state institutions have to remain as leaders in this and to show that they can manage this and they can do it in a trusted, transparent, and effective manner.
Thank you. Another member is asked, saying some voices are claiming that not all areas are receiving goods. Is that true? And if not, how can you counter this to establish transparency and to encourage more participation?
Hmm.
Um,
No, I mean, the focus has been until now for the last 4 or 5 weeks on people in collective shelter, the 50,000 families who've been in collective shelter. This is where the life saving. So the 150,000 families uh, more or less, who are outside collective shelter, we haven't got major aid to them. I mean, we've been very clear and transparent. I mean, we haven't got enough assistance or aid to send to them.
that
The
was sorry, that was one of the questions, in fact. So most of this aid is going to those that are in shelters.
Yes,
Okay.
I mean, it depends on what we receive, or the focus of the joint response with the UN is for those people in collective shelter because they are in the most
Mm.
need, more vulnerable. But increasingly, we're moving, I mean, step by step towards supporting those outside the collective shelter. Additionally, to those in
Is that
collective.
because financial you don't have enough, or is it because you don't know where they are and they
No,
have
no,
to
it's
go?
mostly financial and limited aid that we've been receiving. I mean, all the aid, I mean, all the airplanes that we got, that half of them are medical, would actually make around 15 to 20% of the needs, which that's why are going towards those in collective shelter for those who are in most need. The ships we got, the shipments from UAE, there's one coming from Turkey, another from Qatar, and additional one from UAE, will make the difference. And this is where we will start sending these items to through the governance to those people living or staying now outside the collective shelter. But the priority for the last 4 weeks has been clearly to focus for those people who are in collective shelter because they are in the most in
Yeah,
need.
we you can almost assume they're the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Um, th- Two questions on sectors. Shelter.
Mm.
Uh, you know it's not sustainable, or what, to keep the using the public schools. Understandably, why it happened because of the scale you mentioned and the speed by which the numbers kept increasing. So government had to respond. But what's the plan going forward on shelter? Many people are asking, and yeah, would like to know what kind of alternative shelters. I mean, not to keep using the schools.
I mean, to be very honest, it's really very tough to find alternative shelter for 250,000 people outside schools. I mean, being very honest, we're trying different options. We're working on different scenarios. Uh, I'll give you an example. I mean, having prefab villages, call them this way, has a lot of challenges, including cost, but also including the availability of land. I mean, where to put these prefab villages? And a prefab village, if you can build it for 1,000 families or 500 families, each of these, still we have 50,000 families, and I mean per village. I'm calling it village, not anything else. So you cannot build these prefab. It's costly. We don't have enough land. There are conflict sensitivity matters when it comes to building these, community villages as prefab houses. This is one option. The second option is to go for cash for rent. Again, we don't have the enough fund for cash for rent, and I'm not sure there's enough housing stock for people in certain areas, with understanding that some areas are conservative to accept everybody to move. We're talking about 50,000 families. So the idea that we've been working on with the Ministry of Education is to move some people from certain schools. So if there are 10 schools, public schools, let's say in Ras Beirut or in Mazraa, so you free one of these and move people to another place. And we're exploring all options, all options. The Medina Riyadiyya, City Sportive, under the structure there. The in Quarantina, municipal buildings, we transform them with the collaboration of some brave NGOs, including Farah Al-Ata and others. The old fruit market in Quarantina. Every single option we are working on to transform, to free some of the public schools in order to create what we call educational centers. But
Hmm.
this can be done for 70% of people. Also, those who move to private schools and private property and how to deal with them. That's a huge challenge. It's not a simple ask just to put say I'm going to move 50,000 people or even 50,000 families or 10,000 families and move them to. There won't be enough places, and we're not able to build large camps or villages for people, and we're not in this mass. So transforming certain buildings is on the agenda. Unused buildings and way to upgrade them to be used is on the agenda. Prefab villages in certain quantities, or certain scale of these. So to have like 100 or 200 families in each of these villages is being planned by the Ministry of Public Work, and we're seeking funding for this. But in specific areas, because there's a conflict sensitivity element here, to be very honest and transparent on this. And some other options that, some of the public buildings that have been unused, transforming them in a way or another. But the number of people in schools is huge. There's 50,000 families.
Absolutely. And I think this is really worrying in terms of what next. I mean, this school year now, a lot of options are on the table of how to find alternative plans. And somebody is asking if you can say a few words about the government's education plan. How is it managing to get the school year going this year, and for the children not to lose another school year?
Uh, I think you mentioned previously, Haneen, there are around 500,000
Half a million students out of school, yeah.
out of school, those who've been displaced from the south, or from Dahi, or from Baalbek, and those who have their schools, public schools, are now, or even some private schools are now
Mm-hmm.
used as collective shelters. So this is, very tough. I know Minister of Education has been working endlessly to continuously to find a way. I mean, the idea was to free a school from an area and to transform it into a what we call educational center. So educational center is a place where it can go in shifts. So maybe 2 or 3 shifts for students to come in from this area. This has been the the uh, the uh, the idea or the proposal or plan. But what happened today is that more people, tens of thousands of them, have moved from Baalbek, and we had to go and open some educational centers to host those people and to have them not stay on the streets.
Yeah, it's very complicated. I want to ask you, Minister, about how you're coordinating with the NGOs, civil society, because obviously that's an interest of the audience, some of the members of the audience here. Um, uh, NGOs can play a role, of course, and but also they can be everywhere, and a lot of fragmentation, a lot of overlap. So, is the government doing anything to try to coordinate them, to bring them in? Please.
So different structures of coordination, but mostly at the district level. And the implementation of the response plan is taking place through the governors. So this is where we're creating structures of coordination at the crisis cell or the emergency cells at the governor's level. So each governor has created a mechanism of coordination. This is what the National Committee has been working on to make sure that these structures are in place. So working in, Beirut, Mount Lebanon, Biqa, North, etc., to get the NGOs. And they are actually many or most of the response is being done by NGOs at the ground level, at the field level. But we're doing this at the level of district or governorate level, where it's more apparent. This is where you see it. This is where it makes sense to do the coordination. So this is where we do. At the central level, there's the sectors with the UN and some of the international and national NGOs are part of this. And we have a lot of discussions taking place depending on the sector. So health sector, education, protection, food with the relevant non-governmental actors who have work in these sectors. So we take it as well coordination at the sectoral level. But most of the work now is happening at the district and local level.
Thank you. Somebody's asking, is there a plan to support the businesses that are already struggling to survive? For example, removing taxes, baladiyya fees, etc.
So yes, but honestly, we haven't given this the enough time, given that we've been, under a lot of strain to provide the life saving for people who've been on the streets, collective shelter, and so on. But we're having discussion uh, with the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, next week to discuss this. Parliamentarians as well, the planning, economics and planning parliamentary committee. We've been discussing this. Different trade and associations and chambers have been also in discussion with the prime minister and the different ministries. So yeah, but we haven't got into, to be very honest with you, on very clear way of how we're going to support them. But definitely it's being discussed and it's in the works to have some kind of, the businesses are under a lot of strain, particularly that there's a shift of people from one area to another, and this is affecting first some sectors, agriculture and food production in particular. As these have been really affected. Uh, Give you an example: poultry production has dropped. Uh, Now the citrus farms and orange farms in the south, olive in the south, all of these are not now, in any way operational. So these are just anecdotes, but each ministry is working on relevant to their sector and how to deal with it. The Ministry of Industry, Ministry of Agriculture, and others have been in discussion with the stakeholders, particularly in the private sector, how to deal with this.
Thank you. Um, Many questions coming in, but let me pick a couple of them. A couple of them are asking about the day after. Is the government thinking about the day after, especially on reconstruction? Now, this may be literally down the road, but obviously this needs planning. What are
Definitely.
your thoughts on that?
Um, I mean, so far the discussion has been on damage assessment
Mhm.
and some of the immediate early recovery things,
Programs.
tasks we need to undertake, including rubber removal, roads, and so on. The key for the reconstruction that we've started, but really in a very early stage, is to discuss financing modalities for this. How we're going to do it, what are the ways? I mean, that won't happen fully except after we go into the and we understand the level of damages at the cost of war, which has been, moving. I mean, we're still moving in terms of this assessment. But financing modality and the modalities for reconstruction, we are now discussing them, particularly with the World Bank. But it will take time. I mean, I don't have now a clear roadmap for the day after, except understanding the level of losses and cost of war and the damage, which we're collaborating with the World Bank on, and some of the financing modalities to attract funds when the moment comes to start uh, uh, presenting the cost of war and the need for reconstruction and rehabilitation.
Thank you.
I hope we can get to this point soon, honestly, because
Yeah,
the level of destruction, aggression, and the war on Lebanon is unprecedented, and this has to stop. So the first is really to get this war to stop by all means, and this is a call for um, everybody, all colleagues and friends in this webinar or in this discussion, to lobby for stopping this war, particularly those in certain countries who can be influential to stop the war. The government has been uh, very clear on the full implementation of 1701 and the need to have the Lebanese armed forces as the sole security and armed forces, the national ones, to protect the country and to maintain law and order in all the territories and all the geography of Lebanon. So this is key, and we want to work on it. It's a process. It's going to take time. We need to support the army. The army needs to be supported in terms of personnel, equipment, training, financing, and so on. But this is the way to move into rebuilding the nation in its different structures and different arms, including again having the Lebanese armed forces as the sole uh, 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 armed forces, national ones, to maintain sovereignty and protection for all the Lebanese.
thank you. So this brings me really to the last question, Minister, which is about the diaspora. And um, what role do you see for the diaspora? And one of our members asked, why haven't you actually, the government, not you, you personally, but the government reached out more to the diaspora and engaged them? Because this is as you said, an issue, a calamity of such a large dimension, and everybody needs to come together to help. And as you know, the diaspora is helping. Many of them have been, working either through NGOs or what have you. But yeah, what do you put as their role? What message now would you give to the listeners on
You
this?
I think the main message that I mentioned is to lobby and advocate for stopping this war and to reach a ceasefire, I think. And the second one is to believe in rebuilding the state. Uh, Very challenging, of course, going to be a journey with a lot of challenges. Issues of trust are we need to rebuild trust between the state and the Lebanese, whether in Lebanon or in diaspora. But this is our only way, and this is the message. And this is not poetry. This is key for rebuilding the nation and rebuilding the state. So these are the key messages. Now, the different embassies and ambassadors, I know they've been reaching out to Lebanese in the diaspora and Lebanese abroad, and many of them have been supportive, whether through aid or sending money to friends, family initiatives, and so on. We did not do an account for by the government to ask the diaspora to contribute uh, intentionally because we're aware of the issues that have been before around trust and where the money is going on. Even a lot of the time is exaggerated. I mean, recently at least. Give you an example. So we go to Paris, and Haneen, how these work. It's 800 million pledges. This will take weeks and months of negotiation in order to get these funds, and you need to be prepared with decent proposals, well articulated plans. A lot of the transparency and accountability need to be put in these proposals. But people were saying, "Where's the 800 million?" Next day. So I understand because people have bad experiences in the past. So that's intentionally we didn't want to have this account, but we are encouraging anyone to support Lebanese Red Cross, for example, many other national initiatives by non-governmental actors that we know they're decent. But I mentioned Lebanese Red Cross because they are full partners in this operation and in the current crisis response.
No, absolutely. And we listened to Nabih Jabr last week, and it was very powerful and moving. And one thing he also, like you said, the diaspora is to raise awareness outside. He pushed for that role. Minister, one maybe last final thing. You are also Minister of Environment.
Mhm.
So, and we can't go without saying something about the
Can I
environment.
take a phone call, an urgent one, and then get back to this?
Absolutely,
Just a
absolutely.
minute, a minute
Yes,
of, well, sorry.
absolutely. Yes.
I'm back. Sorry, but with the new
No
wave
problem.
displacement
Well,
from Baalbek, we're opening new collective shelters, and we're just uh,
yeah, it's
to
very
guide
good.
guide people to new collective shelter.
يعطيك العافية. Well, we're not going to take up any more of
Mhm.
your time. We were wrapping up. Just wanted to give you a space to say something about environment, which is also very important for the future of Lebanon.
So, there is an intentional aggression by Israel on towards the environment. Around 5 million square meters were burned by the use of mostly white phosphorus, but also other ways, particularly in the south. This is in the south, mostly in the south, on the border towns. Al Mash'a, for example, was the most hit because it has a large forest land on the borders, but also the use of these uh, advanced bombs and cluster bombs and so on. And the level of destruction is unprecedented, and this would put a lot of pressure on the way we're going to treat and manage the construction and demolition waste. The impact of white phosphorus has been documented, and we filed a complaint to the UN Security Council uh, by us, the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture, the National Scientific Council, but also by Human Rights Watch, Amnesty, and other actors. All of this were put to the UN Security Council. This is a clear breach of all international conventions, including the international humanitarian law. And so this is going to be the impact and the cost on the environment is going to be huge and very significant, and we will need to deal with it. On the use of white phosphorus and the burnt forest and land, agricultural land as well, plus the construction and demolition waste, we will investigate as well the use of certain weapons, but this is at the moment we cannot do it given the intensity of the aggression and the everyday bombardment on the areas.
Such a difficult situation. Minister, I want to thank you so much and really appreciate your work and يعطيك العافية. I can imagine the kind of pressure you're under every day. I think you can consider Diaspora is very willing, supportive, and not just with money, of course, with ideas and passion and advocacy, as you mentioned. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. And thank you,
Um,
everybody, for listening in.
I'll be in, and this is not a promotion, but I'll be in Geneva for the next 48 hours also to do discussion on the humanitarian situation with different humanitarian agencies. So if any of the colleagues and friends are Geneva, we can, arrange for any, face-to-face discussions.
Excellent. Okay, great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. We'll follow up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Good
Thanks.
trip. Bye bye.